Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me is Logan, and we are back from our holiday break. How are you today, Logan?
I'm good. Just as the show started, I accidentally called Ashley. She goes, "What the heck are you doing?" I was like, "I'm calling you in, see what your opinion is on the big Apple TV deal. Making sure our guests are lined up." Could you imagine
Yeah,
if we had booking like a talent booking people? Like I always was jealous of people that
yeah.
is
They have like a
specifically
like
their
a
role.
producer that
Yeah.
will go out there and actually do all this stuff and edit it
Mhm.
and not be me the whole time. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do think
Yeah.
about that.
Can we find one of those people that just want to do it for fun? If you're out
Yeah,
there and
because
listening
we
and
don't
you'd
make
like to
any money
produce a
off of this.
podcast, no, we don't. And if you would like to not get paid for it, but you would like as a resume builder, then
Yes,
give us a
we are good
send us an email.
references. If you
Right.
want to just sit in on these conversations and make sure everything goes swimmingly, let us know.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's people that do that. Like there's
Yeah,
people that do that, but I'm sure they get paid for it. I don't know if you're a college kid out there and you're bored and you like to talk soccer and you like to, I don't know, as we start to grow the platform, maybe get some guests in here.
yeah.
Um, if you're interested,
Yeah,
it'd be kind of
Logan's our
fun.
booking agent. I'm usually the editor and producer.
What's that?
I said you're the booking agent because you usually get the guests, and I said I'm
Yeah,
the
I'm the
editor,
booking. Yeah.
producer. All right. So yeah, we're Logan alluded to it. We're going to be grading the Apple TV MLS Season Pass coverage. Um, so we have a few categories on how we're going to break this down. We have pregame. I couldn't think of a snappy name for this. Pregame, which is the pregame coverage, discussions, all that kind of stuff. Presentation, which is all about camera quality, audio quality, graphics, and replays. Then we have commentary, which will focus on the television commentary, but also we're going to mention the fact that you can listen to the home radio broadcast. And then supplemental material. These would be things like documentaries, archived games, MLS wrap up, MLS 360, the coach interviews that they put on, all this stuff. We'll grade that. And then finally, we'll give our overall grade. And then maybe kind of like a what we want in to see next year. Right. Like, I'm sure this stuff will come up as we're talking about it too. Like, if we're in the documentary section and we're like, we need a Hard Knocks, like I'm sure that'll come up during the thing. But at the end, we'll kind of also just blanket, all right, how do we get this to get better going into the second season of this 10-year deal? So we're not going to focus on any news or anything that's happening this episode. The next episode you're going to hear after this one is about the U.S. Open Cup news, where MLS was trying to get out of that. We were on our holiday break. We were busy. I debated doing an emergency pod of myself doing it, and I was like, let's just wait. Let's just wait until we get through this, and then we'll talk about it. But and I know we mentioned a Mount Rushmore of MLS. I think we're pushing that for another few weeks from now, just because I haven't even really had a chance to dive in on my rankings. I had a list before, but now I'm not sure if that's, maybe I was jumping the gun on a certain person. So we'll see. We'll figure all that stuff out. But yeah, so we're gonna dive into grading Apple TV MLS Season Pass coverage. Afterwards, if you guys and gals want to just reach out to us in the comments or in any of our socials and let us know what are your thoughts on Apple TV's coverage, you can do that as well. We're very eager. I know like some places I've gone to have really disliked it, especially just having the games on Apple, and then some people have really gotten on board with it. So really excited to see how people's thoughts have maybe even shifted throughout the course of the year. Because we are both big proponents for it, so we'll see how we come out on this. Now, Logan, I didn't set any standards on this, but do we want to letter grade each category, or do we want to number like out of 10 each category and then give a letter grade at the end? Like, which way do you want to rank these?
I think we can go number. I think it's a good idea. Like, let's go numbers, and then we can give an overall grade.
Which would then
Um,
give us the letter, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
And then we
fair.
can even talk some like pros and cons with the overall grade, like things that we really liked. Again, like reiterating, but then some things that we might change with the overall quality of it.
All right, so I guess let's start with, do we want to start with the actual pre-game stuff, or do we want to start with supplemental and kind of work our way to actual game coverage? Or do we want to save supplemental for the last bit?
We can save supplemental for last.
All right, so let's start with pregame. So this would be any sort of like, the game kicks off at 7:30, 7 o'clock usually, 7:15, something like that. They usually kicked off uh, the coverage for the game. What was your thoughts overall? I guess we can just share thoughts and then we'll grade it after we kind of talk about each category on the pregame coverage and discussions by like the panels and all that stuff. What was your thoughts there?
Yeah, so this was one of the things that I think we were all kind of concerned about, mostly because when you do something like this, it takes it to a level of national coverage in a way that it's, the games that they're talking about are national, like it's a more national broad scope. Whereas
Yeah, there's no
when
like Homer broadcast type of.
Right, exactly. So when you have Bally Sports, or you had, Comcast or whoever was doing your games before, previously NBC, Fox, they seem to have more of a local touch. And if you're getting more of your local broadcast, you can get those different pieces. But now, and some of the teams were good at supplementing their own social media by providing a pregame, which we'll kind of get into. But I think they could add more localized content to Apple TV without it having to be underneath the Apple TV umbrella. I think there's going to be a way they can kind of figure that out where they can get the teams pregame show, just because I feel like there's a need for content in that area, team specific areas. So I think that's where pregame really did struggle for me. I think they mostly talked about, and because the games were all in the same window roughly, it was really difficult to they jump between games. And there's just not a lot of local level teams that are talked about. So for instance,
Like no specific
right.
pre-game of the game you're about to watch. It was
Yes.
kind of like a general thing of, all right, we're all like, it's Sasha Kleshton, it's Bradley Wright Phillips, it's
Hmm.
Andrew Wiebe or whatever. We're talking through all of the games that are about to kick off.
Yeah, exactly. And this league's going to get bigger than the Premier League, in the fact that like there's going to be twice as many teams that there are. I think currently we're at 20. What are we at now? Like 27, 20. What are
I
we
think we're
at?
at 20. I think we're at
29.
27 or 20. No, we're at 29, right?
Okay, yeah. So we're on an odd number, 27, 29. Can't remember. I think it's those two. Gosh, I'm all rusty. But yeah, I think what is there? 15. Yeah, 29. So 29 teams. You touch on, what is that? That's 14 games each because one sits. So that's 14 games that they're kind of covering in this pregame, because they don't really have a pregame before some of these, and then on Sunday they might have it. So I think they still have to get their footing on how they want to do this with the windows, and I think pregame suffers because of it. There's not really, again, it ends up being like NBC with the Premier League, and Premier League only has 20 teams, so they've got a lot less to cover. Yet it still seems to be a lot. They've somehow staggered it to where they can kind of get that, where you get at least two games in one window, and then the next game doesn't start until their halftime. They can kind of stagger them like that, but I think with so many teams in so many different locations, with four different time zones in the United States, it's difficult to do. So I think pregame, I would say that this is probably, I mean, if I'm looking at it, Jordan, honestly, like I know some people had the commentary issues. I'm looking at pregame and thinking that it might have actually have been probably the lowest on my score, as far as the other stuff, just because I think it does there is a lot of room for growth. I just don't know how they do it without, you know, with getting around the Apple TV idea and getting the localized broadcast back, but they don't really do localized broadcasts anymore. So that's kind of where Apple's kind of shot themselves in the foot. So
I wouldn't even say you need localized. I just think you need probably a little bit more time spent on each game, or an option to be able to watch pregame of just like this game.
yeah.
I understand they're kind of going the NFL route, right? Like you turn
Hmm.
on Fox and they're like, here's the Ravens versus the Rams, but That's that's the thing you're getting. But we're also going to talk here for a bit about the Chiefs versus the Broncos. You know, and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, fine. They're like setting up all their slate of games. And it's probably cheaper to be able to just do one thing like this. My biggest complaint about the pregame, Logan, is when there is no pregame.
Yeah.
When you turn it on and it's just that MLS
The music and then
backing
yeah.
noise with the thing going over and over and over and over again. What I would like to see instead here, if they don't want to add too much content, there has to be a way to make a playlist on this. And what I mean by is set it up where you know those 3 minute previews that they use on Apple TV
Yeah.
where it says like preparing for Atlanta.
Hmm.
Throw in some pregame media sessions and just play
That's a
those
good
things
idea.
instead of the music that's like
That's a really good idea. Yep.
yeah, like just play the stuff you already have on your service, but
Yep.
be able to make it where like, all right, and it's focused on those teams. I turn on Philly, Cincy. I'm seeing preparing for Cincinnati, preparing for Philly, and I'm seeing Jim Curtin give out a press conference before the game. I'm seeing, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Practice sessions.
I
Yeah.
yes, I would rather those type of things that they already have anyway. And you can even just have somebody do a narration over top of it, like, um, you know, hey, here's Jim Curtin before the game, or here's what Jim Curtin said after the last game as they come off a loss, and look at hosting Cincinnati now, and you know what I'm saying, and then that's like really easy to do.
We'll
Those
do that
top
for them.
player things,
Yeah.
those top player things that they have on this, like what they have right now, they have something about like game changers,
Hmm.
Thiago Almada, right? Or the history of the club. Like play that kind of stuff before the game kicks off if you're not going to have any sort of preseason, like pregame stuff.
Yeah, and if you need narrators, Jordan and I are more than willing to sit down one of these nights and just record some voiceovers. Here's
Yeah,
Jim
exactly.
Curtin on his last, the previous. Here's Kai Wagner working out in all Philadelphia Union gear. Is he coming back to the Union?
Yeah.
Not, no, not stuff like that. But stuff like that. They could pitch some of their messy stuff. Show like, on the Miami game, they could show some of the messy things. They could even have Jordan, like if they did really good storytelling pregame where the NFL countdown does that. The Sunday NFL countdown does like those cool little
Like the
stories.
interviews with
Yeah.
people.
Yep. About and it's
Yeah.
sometimes random stuff like their
We sat
foundation or
down with the
like
left tackle
yeah,
of the Broncos and
right,
who had this story to tell. You're like, wow, I
right,
didn't know he had such a adversity in his life.
right.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, get more like storylines for the players out there. That's stuff you can film the week leading up to
Yep.
the game and then just put it on the pregame without having to worry about like paying
Hmm.
Sasha Cleston to sit there and be like, I think
Yeah.
Philly's gonna win. You know, like you can mix up some of this stuff. So I'll rate it. If we're rating it out of 10 here, I have the pregame at probably like a 7 or 6.5, something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 6. Um, Content could be better. I think that's ultimately where we sit on. Content could be better, and don't give me that. Like you said, like I don't need the MLB, and I don't know why MLB does that. NBA doesn't do that anymore. NBA shows like the 10 highlights of the week or whatever it might be, and they play them, and then
Yes.
they
Yeah,
move on to
yeah.
something else. Like player of the week was blah blah blah, and it's like a news, and you can record that, and you could have Andrew Wiebe and them pick out a clip where they're talking about the Rapids, pick out a clip where they're talking about Vancouver. Like that's stuff that you could have. It's easy to do. It's not much more. You don't have to pay anybody to do that. Really, you just kind of clip that down in the production team, and then you put it in. And then even ask for socials. Like ask the teams, their social media people, like, hey, if you got videos, send them in. We'll put them up and perfect pre-game. But yeah, even if they could get even if it was just the audio of pregame for Orlando City or whoever it might be. I know there's that option on different apps and stuff, but
Yeah, yeah.
why not do that kind of stuff? Like they've got studio crews still.
True. True. Um okay. So I'll lower it to 6.5. I'll kind of match yours there. You have a 6. Let's go presentation, which is camera quality, audio quality, graphics, and replays. I think this is the almost like the crown jewel of the Apple TV, and this is probably going to be my highest score because the camera quality is really great. When you look back at what we used to have on ESPN Plus, where everything looked grainy, this is great. This looks fantastic. The audio quality, I think, is pretty good. I usually hear people say sometimes like they can't hear the announcers as well. I don't know. I can usually hear them pretty okay, so I'm not sure if that's like a case by case thing or if it's a way people have settings set up or something. But I could hear them pretty well throughout the season. Um, but the strongest part is definitely the visuals. Yeah, graphics could probably use. They're really basic, right? Like here's this player. That's fine. That's all you really need. The thing that annoys me the most, Logan, on some of the NFL broadcasts with their graphics is like Fox and how they have like a 2D drawn version of every
Yes,
player for
I
some
don't.
reason.
Yeah,
Just show
yep,
the picture of the player.
right.
Um,
Even the
one
moving
day,
player, like the one that moves
yeah,
on
yeah,
ESPN.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like sometimes it's like with the Fox one, they just started doing this like maybe 3 years ago, where they're like, we have every like they'll show like here's Lamar Jackson. It's like an animated version of Lamar Jackson,
right.
and I'm like, what? Just like show his picture.
Yeah.
Um, One, I feel like it's probably like a lot of money that they're wasting on these art pieces because I remember when Daniel Jones went out of the Giants, they had like Tommy Cutlets
Hmm.
as a drawn version as he started like the first game for them. I'm like, you had this ready to go. You had the backup quarterback's picture ready to go as a hand drawn thing. It was weird. So these graphics are fine. They could probably be a little prettier, I think, at times when you look at Scorebug, stuff like that. It's very basic. It's very Apple. That's fine. It's sleek, whatever you want to say. But when it comes to the replays, this is my biggest complaint. I think. I think sometimes we still don't have enough angles for these, and I also think sometimes it takes a little too long to get to a replay, or just like weird choices on when to show a replay. This is
Hmm.
my biggest complaint with the presentation. So, of course, what I would want to see is better replay management. I think everything else, presentation wise, is pretty great, but replays and when to cut to them and how long to show them, sometimes cutting to it while the ball's in action or not having the right angle right away. Um, that kind of stuff is and maybe getting just more angles, right? NFL, you have a damn cameras in the pylons nowadays
Yeah.
that sits at the first down marker.
Hmm.
Let's get some more angles for some of this stuff because that'll help. The big offsides in what Cincy Philly playoff game where people are like, "Oh, he was way off." If you look at the cut patterns on the grass, and this kind of happened yesterday when I was watching Liverpool Newcastle, the guy looked offside, but if you looked at the line patterns of the grass, he was onside, kept onside by somebody up in the top of the field. And I was able to tell that just from not the angle of the camera. The camera made it look like he was off. But guess what? They confirmed it. They didn't overturn it. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, yes, obviously he was not offside. Um, so I want more of that. Give me more camera angles. Give me more replays, and give me better timed replays.
Yeah, there were times that I can remember, like they played replays and people scored goals, and I know it's hard in soccer to do that because they have this little dead time as far as play, the pace of play and stuff like that, and there's just not a lot of like breaks and timeouts and things like that where you can show, but it does seem like they're delayed in scoring goals and then showing the replay for them. A lot of times too, like in VAR, it seems like they're delayed, and like you said, Jordan, it just shows us one angle after one angle after one angle, and it's basically the same. It's not anything different. But I think you hit it on the head where you said camera quality. I mean, I was watching an NFL game on my TV, and I was just like, it's so grainy compared to what Apple can do. Like, it would be interesting to see what Apple could do with NFL. And I'm sitting there thinking, MLS, man, like it's so crisp and it looks so good on. I know it's not fun to play on turf, but turf looks really good because the ball kind of pops, the players kind of pop on that turf. um, and so it looks a little bit better. But yeah, I think the camera quality is great. Audio quality, I've also heard that. I've heard there's times too where people wish they could hear more on the field kind of stuff. Maybe mic'd up people. I guess you can kind of fit that in presentation quality, maybe. Um, sorry. Graphics, I think, like you said, they're so basic. And they're just, I think, the nameplates on the lineup cards. It's so weird. Like, it looks so. It's too minimalistic. I like minimalistic, but Uh, I don't like just the bare bones minimalistic. So even just having like I love what Premier League does. I think it's Premier League where they all walk up to their name, like it looks like they're walking to their
Yeah,
name and
yeah.
they stand. That's cool, and that's simple editing. Like I think that would be simple for anybody to do that. Um, but like you said, in-game graphics, it's just that box. It's just like a big black box with their colors on the top of it, or the big white box with it looks like FIFA. Like it's so generic. And I don't want anything crazy like Fox NFL does. But yeah, presentation though, 100%. I think worth the investment. 1080p too. Like it's not 4K. And Apple. I remember Jordan when it first came out that they weren't going to do 4K, and people were pissed. And
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh my gosh! Like we have this ability to do this 4K resolution, and you guys are wasting your money on doing this in 1080p. That's like the most generic, and it looks so good. Like I'd be afraid for them to do 4K because it might get a little too grainy. And I don't know. Like I just love the resolution. I thought it looked great. I can remember watching the first game, going, "Man, I love this." Even the sets and stuff like that. It's just minimalistic presentation wise. I think it all looks great.
Yeah. So, what would you give it out of 10?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5. Some room for growth, but I think this is easily one of the biggest sells. I think for me is the quality of presentation, and I don't think we had really any like technical difficulties with games. You know what I mean? Like usually there's a
There
big
were
uproar.
there were few. I remember there were some where like the English version wasn't able to be
Mm,
played at times, or um I remember one of those was the Union, and I think another one of the Union was like that they couldn't get it up and like something couldn't get up and running or whatever. I don't know. Barring that, I gave it a 9. I just think because I'm not so sure that much is on the presentation side of it. I guess it could be. Um, but I was thinking it's probably more of an Apple thing than like let's not forget Apple is the one that is hosting all of this, but MLS is the one that actually is making the content right now. That's kind of part of the stipulations of this stuff. So I think MLS did a good job of making sure that they had like Apple supplied the cameras. I think, but when you look at the rest of the stuff, it's MLS making all that stuff, and I think they had a um, great thing going. Okay, commentary. So this would be television commentary. It could be. I also wrote the radio broadcast. I listened to a few of those on there. I'm not going to grade them on it in the sense of, well, the Sounders radio guy wasn't great. Like that's not their control. And I'm not saying that he was not great. I was just using an example. But the that it's an option, I think, is a huge plus. It is a huge plus in this field of commentary because let me tell you, the Union fans were not happy this year with the commentary. Uh, they were happy when Danny Higginbottom was on because he used to commentate Philly games, but they didn't like that he was paired with Steve Cangelosi. Okay, and that's a great option. You can listen to the home radio. I like Steve Cangelosi, but here's the issue too, and I kind of got where people were coming from. Him and Danny Higginbottom were doing every Union game at a certain point. It felt like every single game I'd turn it on and it was Steve Cangelosi and Danny Higginbottom. So it was. We have all these commentators. Let's rotate them a little bit more. I understand Jake Zevin and Taylor Twellman are doing the big game of the week. So if the Union are not part of that, then oh well, we're not getting that crew. It's like trying to get the Joe Buck, Troy Aikman crew, but or the Jim Nance, Tony Romo crew. Where they still didn't give that to the Ravens and Dolphins, even though that game was very important. So that is like a thing I would like to see is maybe a little bit more rotation, not just between different commentators in the teams, but maybe even commentators and color commentators. Maybe we kind of get like instead of them always being paired together, let's see how some of these people interact with different people. I mean, maybe that's not as realistic because they want these people to have chemistry, but I don't know. I feel like there's more opportunity here because I did start, getting like, why are we getting the same commentators all the time? And I know that sounds kind of backwards in the sense of people were complaining of not having consistent commentators to begin with. They're like, I want my local guys. And we got one of our local guys on there. But it's just, I don't know. I like hearing different commentators sometimes. I'm also somebody that doesn't hate like commentators a lot of the times. Um, how people will jump on some of the football commentators or any of these sports commentators because I usually am just listening to them more as like a background as I'm watching and focusing on what's going on. And sometimes I'll catch something they say and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. But it's still like I would like to get more variety on that. And maybe that's just a Union thing. I can't tell you if Orlando had the same commentators every week. I can't tell you if the Red Bulls had the same commentators every week, but it felt like for a while we had the same crew every week.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna have that feel, and I think it, like you said, it's hard because they want to build chemistry, and I get that. Like it can be very clunky when it's guys like take for instance, whenever they put the playoff crews together for MLB, it's always real clunky at the beginning just because they're not used to the way wanting one another commentate. Now you can get some really good professionals like John Shambi, who does the Cubs, also does a fantastic job doing national games because that's what he's done for his whole life is being mixed in. Now I think you could do that. I think you could have a mix of three guys or three gals or three, two guys, two gals, like different things like that. Like I know, for instance, I'm pretty sure is it Minnesota? I think has Lori Lindsay and Jen Hildreth. I believe those are the two that call a lot of Minnesota games. I can't remember if that's the team,
I'm
but
not sure.
all I know is when I watch Minnesota, there's always, I think it's Lori Lindsay, I want to say. But or no, it might, is it Kendra Day St. What's her name? Bean.
Oh yes, I
It's
believe you're
Kendra.
right.
Yeah, I think it's Kendra. Because I'm looking at the list and I think maybe Kevin Egan's on that call. Anyway, it is. It's like the Minnesota one I noticed was always the same person because it always had the girl on it, and she's really good. But I wish Orlando would get her. I don't know which one it was, but she's really good. But it is. It's like It's like Apple looked at it and said, okay, where do they live? And I know that's probably a lot to consider is like where they live. In proximity to the teams that they cover, they don't want them traveling all over the place. But I don't know. It's going to get more costly the more people you add. Um, I would say that like it does kind of stink because you're trying to find rapport, and I think there's some duos that didn't really hit it off as well. So maybe they mix it up a little bit this year, but I don't know. I think it overall, I think it was fine. I just think it like when people say, that they complain about having the same announcers. I get it because they introduced this, Jordan, like they were going to give you different announcers for different games, and they didn't.
Yes,
They
yes.
just kept placing the same ones on your games. I think that was the biggest complaint. But again, you got to remember these people. This is what they do for a living. Like imagine, and I guess NFL does this, but they all have to travel, and that's a lot of people traveling around. The broadcast groups, like maybe they could do like first quarter of the season you get these and then the next quarter you get those and something like that might work, but I just feel like weekly and then some of these midweek games now and leagues cup and whatever takes the place of US Open Cup, like I feel like it's going to have a lot of people traveling around, which I don't think Apple wants to pay for.
Yeah, if you want Zevin and Taylor Twellman, you better hope you're playing Miami, because
True.
that's the
Yes,
only way you're
that's a
getting
good
them
point.
at this point.
And people don't like
Um,
Twelman, so maybe I
yeah,
like
yeah,
Taylor. I think he's fine, but
I
there's a
know
lot of
I
people
like
that don't
Twellman a
like
lot.
Taylor. I was like, I don't know.
He used to start. He actually started out as a union commentator back in like
I love
2010
Twelman. I think
after
he's
he
great.
retired. Uh, okay, so I give it a 7 commentary. What's your stand here?
I'm gonna go 7 as well. They've got a good cast, a good list. I think there's just some chemistry
Yeah, and I
things
think
that
they
they.
actually they just moved on from Adrian Healy.
Yeah,
He said he's not coming back, which is surprising. So I'm thinking they're actually going to cut some of these people down. I don't understand how you can do that with so many games. Or maybe they're just going to try to find cheaper people. I don't know. Because Healy is one of the best. I don't know why you would move on from him.
were
But
you bothered back in COVID when they were doing games remotely?
um, look, as a soccer fan, you're used to remote games
Yeah,
because that's how I grew up. Like watching some of these games on Fox Soccer Channel or whatever. Some of them would be just they're watching it on their TV.
yeah,
Uh, I rather them be there, and I rather them be there because they can see more. When you're having to call a game off the TV, they can only see so much of the action going on, and it can lead to confusion. It can lead to so many things. So I'd
that's true.
rather them be there.
Yeah,
But COVID, I understood.
yeah. I just wondered. I know that some people actually like that, where they could have all sorts of different people because they could broadcast. But like you said, you don't get atmosphere, you don't get a feel, you don't get to talk to coaches really beforehand, except on a Zoom. You don't get that personal interaction they have the week before. So I don't care for it, but I just wanted to see if you're the same.
Yeah. Okay. Supplemental material. So this is documentaries, archived games. Like I said before, the interviews, game changers, all that kind of stuff that they have. They had the draft on this year on here, so we can take all of that into account. MLS 360, MLS wrap up post game. Let's just dive into this for a minute here. Um, I think this is another really good aspect of it because before the season started, as soon as this thing dropped, uh, first thing I did was went and you know checked out all this stuff. Extra time's on there now, right? They have all these old games that I was able to watch. I was watching like David Beckham's first game. They have like a lot of good old school stuff. They have old almost every I think All Star game. Um, like so many classic games. I think almost every MLS Cup or so. They have a lot of good stuff. On here, which is a big plus. And then, like we said before, they have like the history of the club videos. Those I think could be a little longer. Some of these things are a little too short. You know, when you have all these videos that are like 3 minutes, 2 minutes, I don't want to keep touching the remote every 3 to 2 minutes to change what I'm watching. So either package that stuff together or put it in a playlist or do something where I'm not having to constantly kind of go through and be like, oh, that was a nice 3 minutes. Let me watch something else now. But overall, I mean, the fact that they put the draft on there, I was wondering how that was going to be because I was like, usually we're watching it on YouTube. Oh, this year we're able to watch it on. This is what you have one hub of all of your stuff right now, and I really dig this. Messi Meets America. I watched the first 3 of that, I think, so far. Really enjoy it. Um, but this is also the biggest aspect of where they can improve, I'll say. Um, while they're already at a really high number for me on this, the fact that they can add some more documentaries on here, get some more like we said, hard knocks type
Mm-hmm.
content, or what NBC Sports used to do, which is called MLS 36, where they'd spend 36 hours with a player before game day and just kind of do fun stuff like that that makes you connect to the players, that gives you storylines on this stuff, because that's what we still worry about, right? Is
Yeah,
where's the storyline here? um some of these players don't get highlighted enough. This is a good way to do that. Do like a Hard Knocks Columbus, right? Or do you go with like the Supporter Shield winner? Do you go with the Wooden Spoon winner? who would you pick, or do you just ask a team and say, hey, would you like us to do this? There's multiple ways that they can do this, and this is the biggest thing. And again, it doesn't have to be team specific. Then they can do something like I said, MLS 36. Pick a player each week that you're going to follow some cameras around. That's pretty cheap filmmaking, you know what I'm saying? And then you have content that's driving people there. Maybe you put it on Apple TV Plus without Season Pass as well, that maybe people check out and they say, oh, like NFL, like Netflix's quarterbacks thing, be like, oh, I loved watching Ladero. I gotta watch Orlando in this now. You know what I'm saying? And that can draw people in. But so far, it was a good start. But this is a spot where they can really improve.
100% agree with that. I'll echo the fact that they need something like a Hard Knocks that gets you invested in the players. And Jordan, like you said, I think this league right now, it is so young that we don't have storylines. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but this year is like the first time I think we could really establish there are storylines in this league now. And I think that highlighting some of these players, highlighting Portland and Seattle's rivalry, like doing a rivalry week where you're following Seattle and Portland players, I think that'd be a lot of fun. I know this is all costly. I know it comes down to the expense that people are going to have to do, but it doesn't feel like that's that much, right? It feels like production crew, camera crew, maybe somebody narrating, somebody talking about this. What do you have on tabs anyway with Apple TV? Like, you know how many good people and actors they have with Apple TV Plus, and how many actors are involved in this league alone that have invested. Like Will Ferrell commentating on LAFC, We Are LAFC was
Yes.
always fun. Like that was cool. Like getting things like that. I mean, I think we've got enough characters in this league now where, I mean, Miami's going to be that team where I want to see what happens next year. I want in the locker room. I want to hear what Suarez is saying to Messi, that's saying to Alba. That's, like this is a
Right,
massive
right.
team, this year. And I think that would be interesting. I think having a cool storyline with Pat Noonan coming from Philadelphia now with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's so ingrained with their culture and their fans. You could really do like a Wrexham in Cincinnati, I think. Like you could really do something where you're building out a really cool storyline with how ingrained that team is, because Cincinnati is just bonkers nuts for their team. Even Austin. Like I think people, they love to hate Austin, right? And LAFC maybe, NYCFC. Well, don't give them anything, but
Not until they have a stadium.
right? Austin, I think Austin would be a lot of fun, right? You got a lot of divisive characters there. You've got a fan base that is very passionate that drives some people nuts, and I think it'd just be a lot of fun. Like I think you could get some really good stories out of this, and I think we're lacking that.
Also, give us some historical stuff. I'm a history major.
Yeah,
I love history. Um, so one thing I always liked watching when I was growing up and watching stuff like football, turning on NFL Network and being like, "Oh, here's America's game." It's those videos that they make of the champion of each Super Bowl, right? And it usually has highlights, behind the scenes footage from like that they have from filming stuff, and then it usually also has 2 to 3 players and a coach picked out that kind of is sitting there giving a talking head to the camera. So they have these for like every Super Bowl. So they had like people that were still alive for Super Bowl one doing this back in like the 90s or the early 2000s. And give us something like that for MLS Cup champions. Get some of the people that won the first one in 96 together, do a documentary about it. It takes like 45, 50 minutes of footage, is what you need. Have them tell the story of the season. Oh, and then this happened, and we were thinking, man, this won't be our year. But then it was, like just give us stuff like that. And what that'll do is that'll try to cement this league historically, right? Like it will give people that were not there for that time the history that we were not familiar with in 96, right? Because I was 5 years old. And yes, I've seen highlights of stuff. I've watched the first MLS Cup, of course, on replays and stuff, but give us the story aspect of it. What was going on with it? Did they have a star player who had to overcome something in that year? Did their star player go out injured and they find a grocery bag man like Kurt Warner? Like, give us the story that led them to the MLS Cup win. And you do that, and what that does is I think it really legitimizes previous MLS Cups. I feel like sometimes we're too focused on how's this league changing. We're at MLS 3.0. Do we ever talk about NFL 4.0, 5.0? No, we don't. Right? And actually, NFL still really new when you look at it, right? The merger was in 67 or something. It's like the first Super Bowl. It's not that long ago. We're getting to the point now where we are almost 30 years from the creation of this league. Let's start highlighting some of these people before they inevitably pass away. We can't, right? Like, let's get their thoughts, recollections, good archive footage if we have it. Cut it in with moments of the season and give us those champions and give them their due. And it'll be awesome for new people that are watching along and be like, wow, I didn't know this happened. Or they are a DC United fan that was born in 2002 and are like, wow, I wasn't there for 96 and our run to get 3 MLS Cups before 04. And you know, that's easy content that can't cost that much. It just can't cost that much.
I tune into Jordan like MLB classics, like just to watch Derek Jeter play. And I watched him play, but I like
Yeah.
watching that old school. Like put it on
Not Derek
film.
Jeter, but yes.
Yeah, no, I actually like Derek, but no, you put that stuff on film, like put Beckham on film, put Zlatan, because eventually, somewhere down the road, you're gonna hope you have that content on your streaming platform because people will be looking for it. It's just like having Michael Jordan on the NBA stuff. It's like why Michael Jordan is
Like The
on the
Last
NBA
Dance, yeah.
games, yeah, like the video games, like all these
Oh,
highlights,
yeah, yeah.
like you can play with Kobe, like there's a reason because people love that stuff. Put more content. Like you're the streaming service Apple TV Plus. Like you actually have really good content. You know what Apple Plus is missing is I think ultimately getting to like there's a reason why I have a League Two team saved on my thought mob. I love watching
Right.
Wrexham. Like I love Wrexham. Like I love that. Like watching the storylines. I don't even have any ties to that except for the fact that I just love how ingrained it is into their culture. Like you have that in a lot of teams here. Go to Seattle, go to Portland, go to Cincinnati, like go to
Yes,
these
go to those
teams.
teams, like you said, Seattle, Portland, Vancouver. They've been around since the
Yep.
70s. Go to the original
Yep. The
96
Galaxy.
teams, right? Yes,
Right.
Galaxy, DC,
Right.
Columbus. You know, these
Rapids
are
Crew.
teams
Like
that
you've
can,
got great teams. Just go to
yeah,
them and create content. Like create a half a season here, a half a season there. You're going to get you're going to get the rewards from doing these things. I think monetary and growing this fan base. If you do not capitalize on the fact that you have some of the best players that have ever played this sport in our generation, if you do not have a crew covering this Miami season, then you're absolutely missing out on what's going on down there.
yeah. All right, so I rated this actually. It sounds like I was asking for a lot, but I rated this an 8 because I think most of it's great. MLS
Yeah.
360 is great. Just remove the commercials, right?
Yeah.
Like there are
Yeah.
things here that
Yeah.
are so. MLS wrap up is a great way to get your information
Yep.
after you watch all the games because you're like, well,
Yep.
I missed a lot of the 7:30 games because my game was on.
Right. And
So
Extra Time is one of the best
yeah,
podcasts, continues to be one of the best podcasts for any sports fan,
right.
regardless of the
So that
sport.
there, it's such a strong base, but we're just asking for more that I think can really put this over the top. But I'm going to give this an 8.
Give it a 9. I love it. Like I love everything so far, and I just the 10 would be just get me more storylines, get me more content. It is a streaming platform. There's a reason why we all pay for Hulu and Netflix and YouTube, and we like stories. We want to hear stories. Tell us more. Apple TV, Apple Plus, like you got to be able to tell us more stories. MLS League Pass, like I feel like it's coming, but you need more.
All right, so my overall grade apparently is a 7.6 out of 10. If I add up my grades, that 6.5 and that 7 kind of brought it down, but that is a 7.6 out of 10, which is what? A 76%. That's a C plus. Which sounds harsher than it is, I will say. But so I will actually bump this up to a B minus just from overall. I was very happy with it. I thought the price was good. We didn't really talk about that. Um, uh, So I have plus a 7.6 out of 10 for the ones we numbered, but I'm going to bump it up a bit to a B minus. Give it, hey, the price was good. I enjoyed watching it every week. I didn't have any big problems. So I can't be displeased. I'm going to go ahead and bump it up to a B minus for mine. Do you need me to do the math on yours, or
I
you
got a
got it?
76 or 7.6 as well.
That's wow. That's funny.
But again, I think price, no blackouts. We didn't talk about that. Love
Yes.
that because damned if I don't get blacked out of stupid other games. I'm watching the Pacers
Mm-hmm.
play from Indianapolis, and I can't watch them because they're playing the Magic. Because it's the stupidest thing. There's nowhere to watch it. Who the hell's watching it? Where are you watching this Magic game in the freaking nowhere? It's not on local TV. What the hell? So no blackouts. Price. Jordan, another con though is that I feel like it still is. It's not. It's not growing MLS in the way that it could be. And by that I mean I get the free games. I understand that. This is where I think they lack the storylines and the documentaries. Like if people are going to pay for Apple TV Plus but don't want to do MLS package, they're not getting any of the Apple. They're not getting MLS. Like they're not getting the pregame. They're not getting like you need some of that kind of stuff. Content you can shift over to your streaming platform where people are that are interested could go,
They
that's
got
interesting. Maybe we
they
could.
got a little better with that throughout the season because I
Yeah.
think there was a few weeks where even MLS 360 was free for
Hmm.
people. So that was a good move, I
Yeah.
think, too.
But you got
So what do you letter grade them?
B minus. I think we're
Oh wow, we
yeah
came out to the
yeah.
same exact thing here.
I was in between a B and a B minus like that because a B minus is like there's room for growth, right? There's a lot
Yeah,
of room for
yeah.
growth, but we love a lot of what you're doing to get there.
And C plus felt harsh to me. I was like, I have to
Yes,
bump this up just
yeah.
a little bit.
Because we both said we love it. Like we both said we've really
Right, right.
enjoyed it most of the season. It's just there's been things that they could do better, and the fact that it's year one, Jordan. So let me ask you this: the fact that it's year one, like looking forward to next year, what do you think you could possibly give it going forward if they add some of these other things? Where do you see it kind of landing maybe in 2024?
Realistically, I think it might only go up to a solid B because
Yeah.
I do worry that they're not going to do some of this stuff. So I am hesitant to say that it can be. Look, if they do what we were just saying, which I know sounds like we know better and all this kind of stuff, but we do. But it's
We're the consumer though. Like everybody
yeah,
else is probably going, yeah, hell yeah,
tell
we
us-
need to Wrexham.
yeah.
Like,
Give me what I want.
yeah.
This could become an A plus, like in the 10 years. This could become huge for like just not just for growing the sport, but I mean like for me watching it, where I'm like, because there were some weeks where I did not interact with anything outside the games because I felt
Mhm.
like I saw a lot of this already.
Yep.
And with how the regular season goes, where there sometimes are very weeks near the end of the season or in the middle of the summer where not much is changing. Uh, Sometimes, you watch MLS wrap up and you're like, these are the same storylines they're talking about because nothing's changed. That's part of the league's problem, though. But if they had that other supplemental content on there, then you have other storylines, right? Or if you dive into different, like we said, you interview the goalkeeper from Vancouver who's working their way up through the youth ranks or whatever, and you find out he had to overcome something to make it to this point in his career, and he has this sit down interview for 10 minutes that has like pictures of him in childhood, and like you see him in his goalkeeper kit and you're like, wow, he's actually going to become that. That's the kind of storylines that you can do, so that way when you watch it you're like, oh, I'm rooting for this Vancouver goalkeeper because I saw this thing on him and he's so great, he's so humble, he's so nice, type of thing. That creates storylines enough for you to be like, now I'm interested in this game I wasn't interested in before. And that's ultimately what they need to do, is get people to watch games that they are not interested in. We watch them because we do this and we love it. But for a lot of people that were just Philadelphia fans, they watch just the Philadelphia games. Maybe they watch a big game, the big national game of like, oh, it's Portland, Seattle. Sure, I'll watch that. Or Miami versus whoever this week. I'll watch that to see them, talk about Messi or see if they can get themselves out of last place. But those are all like results based a lot of times. Give us some more personal stories where then we can connect with somebody, and I think we're doing a lot better on this. But wow, this went way longer than we were originally supposed to go. So I think this will be our episode for the week. We'll definitely discuss the U.S. Open Cup stuff at a later date. But this was really great to talk and grade these Apple Plus report card that we're doing here, because I felt like it was important with it being the first one, the first season of this. It felt like, all right, and maybe we'll revisit this next year, but if not much changes, I don't think we're going to sit next year and be like, all right, we're not going to do an hour on it. Maybe we'll be like, hey, do you bump this up a letter grade or you demote this a letter grade? And we just kind of spend a segment on it. But I think this deserved almost an hour because of how important it is to the league's growth.
Yeah, it's been a huge success. Garber talked about how good it's been for the league. I think the clubs are pretty happy with it. We didn't really see any regression. We got some of the best players in the world coming to MLS, which is absolutely wild. Um, we're at a spot now, man. We're at a crucial spot. World Cup qualification starts up this year with other countries, so I mean it's right around the corner. We've got MLS growing. We got U.S. Men's national team really starting to take off. Man, it's an exciting year. 2024. I'm looking forward to seeing what MLS does to grow. Apple TV does. Apple TV Plus does to grow MLS League Pass.
ML League, yeah.
ML League, just all of them, just all the major leagues. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I really did like this product, and I'm ready
That
to
would
renew
be a
my
deal.
subscription. What's that?
ML League,
ML
where it's
League.
just every major league, no blackouts. That would be great.
For
Give me that.
$78.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd pay for it.
Yes, I think this is a really great starting point for it. It is important to the league. The league is happy with it. Apple's have said they're happy with it. Do not listen to World Soccer Talk where they're talking about the decline in ratings. They're talking about television ratings, which most people are not watching because they all moved to the streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what our generation is doing. We're
Right.
not watching
Nobody
a lot
owns cable networks.
Right.
Nobody owns cable.
So when they're sitting there saying like, ooh, they actually lost fans. That's one of the things World Soccer Talk said. The MLS lost fans this year. BS. They gained so many. Look at Inter Miami's Instagram.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yes, they won't publish the numbers, but guess what?
Right.
That has nothing to do with this. They wouldn't publish it at all.
No streaming platform does. So
no streaming platform is doing that right now. Because Netflix started releasing hours watched recently because of the strikes where they had to put out like a year-end thing for it and stuff. But they're not. Again, they're not going to be like, we gained this much subscribers from it. And if they ever do, they'll say something like, we gained 38% subscribers. They're not going to give you full numbers. They're going to give you percentages, hours watched, stuff like that. They're not going to tell you straight up how many subscribers they have. I just don't think they will. Okay. Well, thank you all for watching or listening. Give us your thoughts. What would you grade Apple TV's MLS Season Pass? Let us know your thoughts there. Have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you next time.